Hello and welcome to a half-hour presentation on the state of the city. I'm John Lindsay and this is Tom Price. Together we have over 120 years living experience here in Sudbury, and right now we've reached a point where we're concerned about our future. Tom, what is actually happening? There are agendas in place that seem to work against the general interest of our population. We have an agenda with respect to creating new infrastructure in town when we're not looking after our present infrastructure. This is a real concern.
Absolutely. And it affects every aspect of our living and our lifestyle. If you don't support the basic needs of the community is not going to prosper and it's not going to be healthy. So that's where we're at.
One of the interesting aspects of our new technology is artificial intelligence, and there's a new search engine called Perplexity, and it's sort of like Google, only it's probably a little better. And one of the things I was looking at is an expression, leave well enough alone. And so I went to Perplexity and I asked, what does it actually mean? It means don't try to change or improve something that's already working satisfactorily. Avoid interfering with a situation that is currently stable or acceptable. Refrain from making unnecessary changes that might cause problems. Now we can look at that specifically in a number of particular areas. Let's look at fire services. Looking at our various communities, they've had fire services, stations that have been working for years, but now they want to disrupt this. What is happening?
We have a society now that wants to build empires. They want to build a memorial to their involvement in running the city. You're absolutely right. The stations that we have or had, because now they've closed some of them, were located in the right locations to serve the needs of those communities when they were built and still today. Why would we take those stations out of the community? Well, only to make something supposedly bigger and better, which they are failing to do. So that's where it's headed right now.
So instead of leaving well enough alone, they went to get advice from, well, in the case of fire services, to England of all places. And they didn't come here, they didn't look at it. And actually, when you read the report, it seems like it's not really going to accomplish what we already have.
Well, that's because they didn't really go to England for advice. They went to England to get a report that would confirm that what they were saying was the right thing to do. They did not even provide the English company the proper information on which to base their recommendations. And they stated so. The ORH, which is the British company, stated so many times in their report that this was not their report. This was City of Sudbury Fire Services report. And that's the road we're headed down, using their report as a false endorsement of what the city's trying to do.
I know, and I represent the Mineral Lake Restoration Group and also the CARP group. That's older citizens in town, of which we have 40,000 over the age of 65. And our whole population, we can talk about this later, 50% of our population is over the age of 50. But one of the, this is our latest newsletter, the Mineral Lake News, and one of the report's findings from the fire services study, the consultant's report, was to move the Mineral Lake Fire Station where it is right now in the middle of Mineral Lake and to move it outside the area, which is, and of course there's other aspects to that report too, which are very, very questionable. And we really need to get back and get more citizen involvement to determine what we should be doing, which may be not doing anything except going back to what we already had.
Well, and you have to understand that the British report was based on false information. So if you give bad information in, guess what you get out?
And of course that can be applied too with respect to our arena and our art gallery and our library. Once again, reports coming in which seem to be biased. Is that almost intentional?
Absolutely. I mean, a known thing in the consultant's world is buying a report that endorses what you want to do. And you can do that many different ways. One of the ones that they've been very adept at using in Sudbury is giving wrong information to allow the consultant to come to their conclusion as per what the city wants to hear. And a good example of that is the existing arena. We get people to say that the existing arena is beyond its best before date when it isn't. It's nowhere close to its best before date. But the information they give to the consultants is that it's a worn out building. You and I both know that it's not.
No, we invite anyone who may be viewing now, and invite, of course, our councillors, even the mayor, go over and take a look at that building. I was there during the Canada Day celebrations, and I've been there many times before, and I've gone through the entire building. I must admit I'm no building expert, but it's very difficult to tell if there's any real deficiencies there, and anything that couldn't be improved like they did in Thunder Bay or in North Bay and some other arenas around the province, and that have been renovated as necessary. But it seems like here in Sudbury that there is an intent to move ahead and build something new at a cost, I think you estimated it could be as high as $550 million.
Yes, I did, and that's not an estimate. That's taking the city costs and simply adding insurance or interest that will have to be paid, and adding all the caveats that were in the report that they got back. Things like an extra 20% of area that isn't covered in the 200 million, but they do state as a footnote on one page that it would be required. That adds $50 million to that cost of 200 million.
Also, looking at the site of the new arena, which according to reports would be located currently where they're clearing land, and that would be in the area which was previously referred to as the Junction East.
Yes.
And such structures as Golden Grain Bakery have been already removed, and also the Wacky Wings, which is in the process of being expropriated. But this land, I understand, may not be suitable for a structure like a new arena. Is that correct?
Well, from the report that I've seen by EXP, I would suggest that any good businessman would not build a structure of that weight and magnitude in that property. That property is basically a swamp. The groundwater table is 2 meters below ground level. How do you build the foundations for it without extreme costs? And that's reflected in their soils report, and it's reflected in the report itself at a cost of some $32 million to simply get to a point where you can start building foundations. We're prepared to spend $30 million when there's lots of bedrock around where we could build the same building and not have to spend that $30 million.
Then, of course, we have the situation with respect to the library and the art gallery wanting to be relocated into Tom Davies Square and become a cultural hub, which we had expressed concerns, a number of councillors had expressed concerns with respect to accessibility. But we were told by the city that, well, that would be looked at after we have established the library and the art gallery into Tom Davies Square, we'll figure out how to get people there. Isn't this something that should have been dealt with previously?
Absolutely, and you have to keep in mind that all of our libraries in the city, and there are 13 of them, all are accessible already. Okay, all of them have emergency exits. All of them are very user-friendly. The art gallery, although somewhat limited in accessibility, could easily be made fully accessible. So is that the driving force to get these things moved? And keep in mind, it's called a cultural hub. Well, I'm sorry, but since mid-1800s, the city has had cultural hubs all over the place. Little Italy was a cultural hub. Gaccio was a cultural hub. Cape Rio was a cultural hub, a railway culture. Worthington area and Beaver Lake area was a Finnish cultural hub. All of those cultural hubs work together. and they were formed a multicultural city of Greater Sudbury.
Mhm.
Somebody discovered the word cultural hub, and they discovered multiculturalism, and so now we're looking at trying to build another library and another art gallery to substitute for what we've had since the mid-1800s. And we're prepared to spend $100 million to do so.
Or more.
Or more.
Which, of course, nothing ever comes in under budget. And it is really unfortunate. Our group, the CART group, is totally in favor of maintaining our current Mackenzie Street downtown library. And accessibility is the key. Now, talking about accessibility, we look at the hospital, look at Science North, look at these other venues that have parking available for people who actually want to go to these locations. And we already, good idea or not, we've cleared away a number of properties and made available parking for the theater center and for the arena and for downtown. And then I'm referring to City Council because they approved the building of a new arena on the land that could be used for parking. And Sudbury is a very, very mobile city with respect to vehicles. People drive everywhere. And not providing parking has been a main concern for Sudburyans for many, many years. But now we have the parking, but we may not have it if they build on top of it. Very interesting.
Well, and that's true. And how you build on top of it, as we talked about with the soils report in that area, it's just millions of dollars when you can have that parking area for free. It's there now.
Yeah, and can be made attractive.
Okay.
Talking about population, we mentioned earlier on about 50% of our population is over the age of 50. And when you borrow money, it has to be paid back, and it's not going to be paid back by you and I.
Nope.
Or a lot of people over the age of 65 because we're not going to be here. But the up-and-coming generation is going to be saddled with that debt. Should this be a concern?
Absolutely. For several reasons. Probably the biggest reason is because they're not going to be able to support that debt. The quality of jobs in the city is going to continue to deteriorate to low-income, minimum wage jobs, and the number of high-paying jobs is being replaced by high-tech digital information. It's disappearing. Right. So where are you going to get the high-income people to pay these high taxes to pay for these facilities? It isn't going to happen.
So what we really should be looking at is being more fiscally responsible and making use of the resources we have and looking for the future and how to maintain these resources, because it appears that we haven't done a very good job of looking after our infrastructure. And we've seen recently in Calgary what happens when you don't look after your infrastructure. You can be in real problems.
I would just correct one little word there. You said we should be more fiscally responsible, and I would take out the word more. We should be fiscally responsible, period. Yeah. And we are not demonstrating that at all in this city.
Do you think that the citizens are having enough voice? Are we being heard? People who are like us, who are concerned about the future. We are not going to be here into the long-range future, hopefully a few more years, but we're really speaking for future generations.
Oh, absolutely, and I'm glad you brought that up, because just yesterday we had an announcement in the paper that our mayor is going to get a working together charter. Well, we've been trying that for the last 8 years on fire service. Some of the communities who are losing their fire halls have been trying to work together with fire services, council, and the mayor. At every step of the process, our fire services and the mayor and our council has stood in the way and are planning to take away the fire protection that a number of these communities have. How is that working together? And how can he now come out and state that we need a charter for working together? This is terrible.
It was rather vague, actually, and we thought that we were actually working together. But working together means not just centrally trying to, I guess the concern of the outlying areas is that there's too much attention being put into our central city. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. It's like the the old saying, nothing is an island that stands alone. Every island is surrounded by things that complement it. In the city of Sudbury, we have the city which cannot stand alone, to the point where in 2001 they amalgamated the surrounding attributes that allowed this city to grow. And all it's done is taken the taxation from those surrounding communities and put it towards building a bigger center core. That's not what is attracting people. In fact, people have been moving out of the center core into the surrounding areas because of lifestyle and because of the attributes that those city or towns have. Mm-hmm. So, yes, we need a decent downtown, but it should not be the focal point of this city. The whole city should be the focal point.
Looking at priorities, infrastructure, we touched on that just a bit earlier, but our infrastructure, you just don't build things and then leave them. I mean, the average homeowner realizes that, okay, you buy your home, but then there's constantly needing upgrading, maintenance, plumbing, electrical, whatever it might happen to be. But this has been neglected in many of our areas of the city, the whole city, really.
In 2012, KPMG estimated that the city of Sudbury at that time was $1.9 billion behind in maintaining our assets. That has grown since 2012. As of 2018-2019, it was over $3 billion. Now, if you don't maintain those assets, you reach a point where they either have to be replaced or you don't provide that service anymore. To replace those assets was in the order of $10 to $12 billion at that time. Today, you can you can double it. It'd be $20 billion to replace those assets. So, can we afford that? No, we can't. If you don't put the new brakes on your car when they're needed, your car becomes worthless. And in fact, you can cause an accident. And we saw a lack of maintenance in Elliott Lake when the building collapsed. The shopping center collapsed and killed 2 people. That shopping center no longer stands there. It's been demolished. Well, when we deprive our assets in the greater city by the amount of money that we've been depriving it of, we're facing the same situation all over the place.
Now, of course, we talked about livability, and people come to communities to work and to live because of the livability aspect. You might have an index for that, livability index. And I think in Sudbury we've been fairly fortunate over the years, but I've noticed lately that people are a lot more critical. Our livability index seems to have dropped to a certain extent. And in order to attract people, well, of course you have to have jobs, of course, first of all, but if you do have jobs and people have a choice of where they're going to go, they're going to look at those areas where I'm going to be comfortable in that community. That's going to be a community which I'm going to enjoy living in. But I think we're reaching a point now where we're looking at doing things that are not going to increase that livability index to any significant extent. How can this be turned around?
It's going to take public involvement, and it's going to take councillors and the mayor who listen to their constituents. This working together. Quite frankly, when I saw that in the newspaper, I thought, okay, they're going to decide what they want this city to be, and they're going to come out like they did in fire services and try to convince the people that this is what's best for them. And in the case of fire services, the people knew it was not the best for them. That didn't matter. They pushed ahead anyway. And now, as you suggest, they're looking at moving the Minnow Lake Fire Station. There's no need to move that station. It's where it should be. If the company in England had the proper information at their disposal, they would have recommended putting it where it is. So until we can get a council and a mayor who listens to the people instead of taking direction from the city, it's not going to change.
Now, there are certain things that can be done. You don't need to do big things to make people happy. In our Mineral Lake News, we talked about the Bancroft Waterfront Walkway, which was restored, and very much appreciated by the citizens. Now, these are not big ticket items,
No,
but you look at big ticket items like the arena and the library and the art gallery. Now, once again, it was the city came up with these particular ideas, really almost without citizen real participation. As a matter of fact, with the KED, there was a lot of citizen participation. They were upset about it. Now, thank goodness that's gone by the board, but the idea of a new arena is still there, even though we have a perfectly functioning arena. It's a very strange situation.
I would suggest the KED is not dead. When they realize the futility of building in the swamp downtown and the cost to do that, keep in mind the $30 million to get out of the swamp and get up to where you can actually build the thing would not have been necessary at the KED. So that's another $30 million on top of the $200 million, plus interest on borrowed money. So how do they justify it? Where's the business case to spend that extra money to build in the swamp? And I haven't seen it.
No, and once again, I think we have to go back to the public. We're just running out of time. What should we really be looking at? What are we asking for here now, outside of the mayor's? Let's get together and have, what did he describe it as?
What I would be asking for at the present time, with the present state of conditions, I would be asking for the province to step in, dissolve council and the mayor, install a manager, and call a new election.
Well, that would be ideal, but with reality, what can we do with what we actually have right now? What should the mayor actually be doing outside of saying that we're going to form this special group, or if he is forming a special group, what's the best way to make it work?
Rely on the councillors to talk to their constituents and work with their constituents. I mean, they don't listen to their constituents. We have the rare, unbelievable case where a councillor is suing for harassment of a constituent who keeps asking questions that she either cannot or will not answer.
So what you're saying is really, it seems like our councillors and perhaps the mayor are listening more to the bureaucratic staff rather than the citizens of our fair city.
Absolutely. And everybody knows that.
So I guess before we wrap up here, we should say that an invitation really for people to talk, walk the talk as it were, to express their concerns, because we hear them all the time. You read the letters to the editor, you read comments on various stories, and it appears that people are upset, but it also appears that our council and the mayor are not on the same page.
I think they feel they have the immunity that was just granted to the ex-president of the U.S., that they can do whatever they want and they will never be held accountable.
Now, we don't want to sound too harsh, but then again, as citizens, we have the responsibility.
It's our money.
And some people say, what are you old folks doing there? Well, we have the benefit of many years of experience, sometimes some bad mistakes, but we've learned from them. And we're hoping that we don't make big mistakes right now. We're talking about we're talking about, as we started off by talking about, leave well enough alone in certain cases if things are okay.
I think the expression for that is don't fix what ain't broke.
Yeah, but if we do have things that are broken, they should be fixed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But also, if you want some more information, we have two websites, friendlysudbury.ca and minerallake.ca, where we have additional information and comments on our concerns. So once again, if you have concerns, talk to your councillor. And the mayor as well, if you can get hold of them. It seems to be difficulty at times, but because you've had difficulty, you wanted to talk to the mayor. He said he would speak to you.
Yes.
That was about
a year ago.
Yeah.
He still hasn't gotten back to us.
So, and Tom and I are willing to talk at any time to anyone, and especially to our councillors and to the mayor. So thanks once again, Mr. Price, for being with us.
You're welcome, and thank you for the opportunity to present where we're really at in this city.
And until next time, goodbye for now.
Thank you.